if you give 2 months free, you're basically given a 16% discount on the rent for the year.
Yeah, a whole sixth of the year for free.
Yeah.
So that's why whenever we do concessions, we do them only when we need to, sparingly, and then we like to phase them out. So we don't like the long-term concessions. Now, there could be some places out there that'll say, well, hey, if you pay your rent on time every month, you get whatever rent for free. That way, it's a continuing concession that's perpetually going on into perpetuity, and if everybody's paying on time and you're doing 2 months free rent, that's a $5 million valuation that's just lost based on your calculations you just gave us. So
That's painful. That's the main thing I'm going to think about for the rest of this episode, by the way.
is how much concessions affect your valuation. Welcome to the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast, where precision meets performance in commercial real estate. I'm your host, Jason Williams, and every week we deep dive into the strategies and systems and stories behind rock-solid underwriting. Whether you're a seasoned analyst, an up-and-coming investor, or a commercial real estate professional looking to sharpen your edge, this show is your front row seat to expert insights, emerging trends, and real-world underwriting tactics that stand the test of time and scrutiny. From market assumptions to debt structuring, cap rates to cash flow, we're cutting through the noise and getting to the numbers that matter. So sharpen your pencils and fire up those models. Let's get to work. This is Ironclad Underwriting. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Williams, and I got, again, my business partner, friend, co-host, Frank Patalano. How are you doing, Frank?
Hey, doing great.
So we're continuing on with this little mini series of the real cost of vacancy. And in the last episode, we talked about economic versus physical vacancy. And in this episode, we're going to go into concessions and why your economic vacancy is going to be higher than your physical using from concessions alone. So do you have any quick stories, anecdotes, or anything about concessions before we begin?
The best story I can start with is obviously every market's different. And I remember when we had a deal in was it Albuquerque? North Texas. What's the place up in North Texas?
Amarillo.
Amarillo, yeah. I have to think of the song Amarillo by Morning by George Strait.
Technically, that's not North Texas. It's in the Panhandle, but continue.
Yes, boss. As a non-Texan, you have to give me some slack on this. I consider the northern part of Texas, but I understand it's Panhandle. Anyway, their normal. I remember when I was in that deal, their normal market occupancy was like 80. No, it was like 90 something percent. But they had no problem giving some concessions like all of the time, and that just drove me bonkers. If you looked and compared to the other assets, I can't remember how big ours was. I think it was a 275 unit. But just the whole concept that every single property was running specials all the time, that just freaked me out.
Yeah, it's kind of concerning why you have to keep running all those specials all the
Exactly.
time. Because I think of a concession as like a last resort thing. Personally, I don't want to give concessions if I don't have to. And I'm only doing it to boost physical occupancy.
So it's kind of like one of those stores that always has things on sale.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like Hobby Lobby. It's like this week it's crafts, next week it's paints, and the following week it's fabric. There's always a rotation of sales going
I mean,
on.
Sam's Club always has their little rotisserie chickens for like $5. They have like a loss leader. So a concession goes to a loss leader, I guess.
Well, I think Sam's Cafe is a loss leader in
Yeah,
itself. The
that's
whole
true
thing.
too. How much are hot dogs right now?
A hot dog and a soda is $1.50, and it's always been $1.50. If
Yep.
you go and buy the hot dogs that they're selling, they cost like $1.25 just for the hot dog themselves, not with
I
the
agree with you
bun,
100%.
not with the drink and everything.
So what I'm trying to say there is that I don't think that concessions should be like that. Some in some markets or some people want it to be that way, and it drives me nuts. And I guess the main thing we need to talk about too is concessions that are long term versus concessions that are like very short term or temporary, like come on specials.
Yeah.
I'll give you another one. The deal that we just sold in Idaho around Christmas time, because you got a lot of snow in Idaho, and it's a slower time of the year, between Christmas, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We on Black Friday we bought a few big screen TVs, and the first five tenants that moved in with a new 1 year agreement. These weren't extensions. These weren't renewals. These were brand new tenants. We gave them a free, I don't know, 60-inch flat screen TV.
Wow. That's impressive. And if I was renewing my lease and I heard about that, I would be pissed. It's like, I'm canceling my lease and signing up a new one just so I get a free TV.
I didn't say that I was the lead sponsor on deciding to do it that style, but I agreed to the concept because we needed to be 90 for 90 for agency debt.
So you're like one of those people who's just pulling people off the street just to get it.
No, no, no. They still had
What's
to get approved. They still had to get their
oh,
credit and
I'm
everything
just giving you a hard
I know,
time.
I know. Besides, I'd rather not give away the TV. I'd rather bring it home myself. It's bigger than any TV I have in my house, but no, it'd be too long to ship.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not going to go into TVs. Um, so a concession, and we've talked about concessions before, but since this is an episode on concessions, a concession is something that you give the resident. You're giving up some sort of monetary value to entice the resident to move in. And in your case, it's giving them a TV, a 60-inch TV, what, maybe like $400 or $500 or something, depending on your brand. If your rent is $1,000, that's essentially like a half month rent or something like that. So, we have done concessions before where we had to give a full month's rent, and that partly because our neighbor down the street was giving either 1 or 2 months rent of concessions for free. So you sign up now, your first full month is free, and then you pay your second full month. So if you move in on the 15th, you still owe whatever you owe for the prorated rent, but then on the first for the following month, you don't owe anything. So but what you have to consider is if you have, say, $1,500 a month rent, and let's say you're giving 2 months rent, 2 months of rent for free, what does that actually mean? And so your effective rent for that unit for the year is, instead of 1,500, is now 1,250. It's like, well, how do you get 1,250? Well, let's just do the math right quick. So you have
Yeah, yeah.
you got $1,500. You multiply that by 12. That gives you what, 18,000 for the
Yep.
year. Okay. If you give 2 months rent for free, instead of multiplying that by 12 months, you multiply it by 10, because 12 minus 2 is 10. So 1,500 times 10 is 15,000 for the year. So now if you take that value, you're already off $3,000 from what you originally were planning for that single unit. So if you're doing this for 100 units, you're off by what, 300,000?
How many units?
100?
Yeah, 300,000.
So hopefully you're not doing this for all your units all at the same time. But
You
for
better
this,
not be, because 300,000 and a 6 cap is a $5 million difference in value.
yeah. So this is how concessions affect your pocketbook, and this is why it's the real cost of vacancy. What the real cost is to get people in those seats. So you have $15,000 for 1,500 at 10 months. You divide that by 12, and that gives you your $1,250 per month. So instead of $1,500 a month, you're effectively giving them $250 a month for free. So
I mean, if you give 2 months free, you're basically giving a 16% discount on the rent for the year.
yeah, a whole sixth of the year for free.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 6 times 16 is like what, 96? So 6 2/3 or something. Yeah.
yeah.
Crazy.
So So that's why whenever we do concessions, we do them only when we need to, sparingly, and then we like to phase them out. So we don't like the long-term concessions. Now, there could be some places out there that'll say, well, hey, if you pay your rent on time every month, you get whatever rent for free. That way, it's a continuing concession that's perpetually going on into perpetuity. And if everybody's paying on time and you're doing 2 months free rent, that's a $5 million valuation that's just lost based on your calculations you just gave us. So
Yeah, that's painful. That's the main thing I'm going to think about for the rest of this episode, by the way.
is how much concessions affect your valuation.
Well, I mean, I don't know anybody giving 2 months free rent. I mean, I have seen it, but never me. So
Yeah,
if you have to give that much free rent away, there's a problem somewhere.
now, granted, if you're sitting at 73 to 75% vacancy, or not vacancy, occupancy, physical occupancy, consistently for 3 or 4 months, maybe you need to do that just to get people to move in. And so you have to weigh the difference between 1250 a month versus zero. So
Yeah. Or between getting 75% of your rent in or getting 90% of your rent in.
yeah. So again, that's why we believe it should be like as needed basis that phases out as quickly as you can. So
Yeah, you almost want to question if everybody's doing it, like I was saying in Amarillo, and by the way, I'm not even saying Amarillo's like that now. I have no idea, but there are definitely markets like that. If everybody in the market is giving concessions, what is the market rent really? You know?
yeah. And and that raises a big question too. I was like, theoretically, maybe we are saying our market rent's 3,000 a month. Okay. And so our GPR is like super outrageous, but we know we can't get that. And so we're saying, well, we'll give you a concession and give you half month rent for a year. So everything's now 1,500. So now you're back to the 1,500 per month, but you're like flipping it and making them think that they're getting a 3,000 a
steal.
month unit half price.
They're getting a
So I
steal.
mean, yeah. So I mean, that to me that's kind of shady, but I guess people can do that. I don't know. What other concessions have you seen other than TVs and 3 months of rent?
Um,
Let's see, application fees waived.
yep, definitely. Like I
Um,
said, I said in the last episode, $99 move-in special,
yeah,
where the first month is $99 with no application fee and maybe no security. So not having a security deposit could be a concession. Without Rhino or whatever else they use as possible services.
without the waiver deposit
Yeah.
programs or deposit waiver.
Or what
And
you might do is, I mean, $10. Say that the deposit waiver program is $10 a month. You might absorb that on your end.
yeah, so be 120 a year, maybe potentially.
Yeah. We did when another thing we did when we built the overhangs or the carports is didn't we give the first couple at a discount just to start renting them, or when somebody moved in, maybe we offered 50% for the first month on the carport?
I think we did. Because when the carports were completed, it was outside of like the hail season here, and so nobody really cared about it.
Yeah, it wasn't high season in that.
Um, but once hail season came around and the big weather and everything, people started parking under them and paying for them. So yeah, we would give like 2 months free parking under the carport if they signed a 12-month lease with parking. So we did do that. You could do potentially pet fees or whatever waived. I recommend not doing that just because I know how destructive pets are. And a $200 savings up front can cost significant. So especially if the person doesn't think they're going to get it back anyway. So let's
Definitely.
see. Gift cards. I've seen gift cards, and
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
you can do gift cards like a $25 or $50 gift card if you pay your rent on time on the first or second of every month. Um, or on the first of every month, you're in a drawing for a gift card, or maybe you get a gift card. I don't know. Um, that is a good incentive. I know a lot of people who pay religiously. They always pay after the fifth, and in our leases in Texas, after the fifth, it's going to be you're paying a late fee, and they just absorb that into their rent for some reason. I don't know. But if they pay beforehand, maybe they would get like a $50 Starbucks card or something like that. I think $50 at Starbucks gets you what, two coffees now?
I don't even know. The only time I go to Starbucks is on some gift card that I got. I had like a closing that I got a gift card on, stuff like that. So
You could do potentially free washer and dryer rent if you rent out washer and dryers. You can use those as concessions. So I mean that's taking away money from you, but it's really no added cost on your part.
I mean, why do people do concessions? So let's just mention that.
I mean, really, my the reason why I do concessions is to incentivize people to move in.
Yeah. So you
Or
have a
maybe
unit.
you're
Yeah.
and I was gonna say, or maybe you can do it to retain people, get them to stay in versus moving out for whatever
So
reason.
so I've that's an interesting concept. I haven't usually used concessions to keep people around. What I usually do on that is I offer small upgrades or like adding a fan to the unit, stuff like that. A ceiling fan. But I was just thinking the main reason why we would want to do concessions is because right now you have, say you have 10 units that are paying you zero a month, if not
Mhm.
costing you money, especially in the wintertime, since you're paying the heat for them and stuff like that. If you can rent a unit, even if you have to give a discount, you're going to generate some kind of income for doing that.
Yeah, generally you want your concessions to be less than the income they generate. If they are more than the income they generate, you're doing it wrong.
I
And
was just saying wow to myself when you even said that. So yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
and if you don't know if your concessions are generating more than your income, you can look me up and give me a call, and we can go through your underwriting together to make sure your concessions are not costing you more than what they're bringing in. But let's move on. I digress. Um, Another reason why you do concessions is just because your competition is doing them, and you have to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. Like I said, our closest competitor on one of our properties, which is just right down the road, they were doing 2 months free rent, and we were offering
They were
1 month.
killing us.
Yeah. So
And that was honestly a nicer looking property on the outside. I don't know about the inside of the units, but I mean that was a nicer quality asset. So them giving away 2 months free rent, that was pretty tough for us. But they had to do it because they were desperate too, weren't they?
they were desperate, and I would call them like a class B, and ours was a class C. But when
Yep,
you're doing that much of a concession in a class B, you are getting into the price range of a class C paying resident.
yep,
So I mean, if they're doing 2 months free rent, going back to our previous example, 1,500 a month. Yeah, that might be too high for a class C person to move into with a family or whatever. But 1,250 maybe they can afford because 250 a month adds up really quickly. So, um, so whenever you do look at concessions, typically what I see for concessions is just a blanket percentage, kind of like loss to lease and bad debt and everything. You say, well, let's just assume 1% or 2% for concessions. Um, if you're underwriting and you're underwriting at 90% occupancy, maybe you're doing 0% concessions in your underwriting. So you have to. It's hard to quantify what the actual concession is. It's like, yeah, maybe I'm giving free month rent for 5 people who sign up by whatever date, but it's hard to plan that ahead. It's like, how do you even think about that? Whenever you're putting together a pro forma. So typically, I would say concessions are outside of the normal business plan whenever you're creating a pro forma, unless you already know ahead of time that you are in a problem property and you have to entice people to move in. What do you think about that?
See, I mean, I don't want to use concessions, but I would consider concessions to be a normal part of doing business during a lease up stage, especially if you have a mid or a heavier lift, or, and just like if you're, especially if you're doing new construction, I would expect concessions, in order to bring people in. And maybe it's just where we are in the market cycle and depending on which market. So if you're in a hotter market where there's not enough of a supply, you might not need to do concessions at all. But I would consider concessions to be like buying something on sale. I mean, you're not going to get it all the time, but you will see it once in
Yeah.
a while, depending on the need.
Yeah.
So for example, at a store, they might have like a manager special. It's like, oh my God, we have 5 pallets that sit in the back room, and the expiration date's coming up. We want to make sure we use it.
Yeah. So in that regard, I think having like a blanket 1 to 2% is probably good, whether you use it or not, whenever you're first going into your underwriting. But again, if you need further detail, I would compare concession data from historic for the property. I would compare concession data to the comps. When you're doing the comps, you also want to look at, are the comp properties doing any concessions as well, and then you can either lower your comps and include no concessions, or there's a lot of ways you can handle it. But that's part of your due diligence period also, whenever you're researching the other properties and your direct competitors. So um and then you have to consider, are these burn off concessions or are they permanent concessions? And if they're permanent, maybe you can think of how can you turn them into burn off concession. Now, we on one of our properties, we had to give a concession. It's not really a concession per se because it's kind of built in, but when we got fiber optic high speed internet on a property, we were going in and we were charging like what, $60 for it per unit.
Yep.
On average, if they got it themselves for the speeds they're getting, they'd be paying over 100. And so we're giving them a discount already, but then we actually had to roll that into the rent itself. So we're essentially giving them that internet as a concession. And right now it's a permanent concession, but we are potentially going to phase it out and start charging the resident back
Yeah, it was
that.
super
So,
painful. I agree.
but that was again, when you're sitting at low occupancy, you have to do what you have to do just to get people to pay. So let's see what other concession creep. I think goes into what you were thinking of. It's like, well, they're always running a concession of some sort.
Yep.
So you get stuck in the cycle, and then and I think if you do it like on a regular basis, like you give a concession at your slow time every year between November and February, people start to recognize that, and there's like, well, let's just wait until November or February where we get a big old concession, and then
I mean, back to that concept, part of it does matter. Like I said, how hot the market is and what the supply and demand is, because one of the problems on real estate is that you might know great tenants, you might have great units, but the timing has to match up where you have a unit that you are ready, willing, and able to rent out. At the same time, you need to find a tenant that's ready, willing, and able to move in at the same time.
for that specific type unit, a
Yep.
2 bedroom, 2 bath, or whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, it's all about timing and making sure you get the right person at the right time. So
But yeah, that's all I got. I can't really think of, I mean, we really deep dove into concessions here.
yeah.
If somebody has
Um
a different idea of a concession that we didn't suggest, they should probably message you or put it in somewhere, right?
yeah, definitely message me, or even give me some ideas of concessions maybe we didn't mention that you are using, and they're cost effective in bringing residents in. So
I
I'm
mean,
always interested.
in the hotel space, we've there was a couple of times we've added a bottle of wine or we've offered free breakfast. And not stuff for the multifamily, but just in the hotel space.
Yeah. So generally, concessions, people like free stuff, like a free TV. Um, now this is going off on a tangent, but on my end, if I'm offered something free, I have to think, would I actually want to go out and buy that thing if it wasn't free? If I don't want to buy it when it's not free, I don't really need it if it's free. So that's how I think about it. It kind of goes against whatever we're talking about, but I don't think I'm the normal person in that regard. So, because I have a house full of free stuff that I've collected over the years, and I don't use any of it, but hey, it was free, you know.
I understand completely.
So this was a good episode on concessions, and if you have more, like I said, I'm always interested in broadening my scope and how I can be a better asset manager or how we can be better underwriters. So let me know what you use. And yeah, this was pretty good. We'll catch you next time. Bye. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Ironclad Underwriting Podcast. If you got value from today's conversation, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share the show. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or check us out at our website at ironcladunderwriting.com for more insights and updates. If you have a question, a deal you're analyzing, or a topic you want us to tackle, shoot us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep your assumptions grounded, your models sharp, and your underwriting ironclad.